Did you know that in Switzerland people eat cat and dog meat? That there is a tradition involving explosives right in the middle of the town square? Have you heard that turning on the vacuum cleaner on Sunday can cause problems there? That the water in the toilet is the same water you drink? What if I told you that substances considered dangerous and illegal in many countries are distributed with a prescription there? That's right. Today, Bello Mundo takes you to discover Switzerland beyond expensive chocolates and luxury watches. A country full of unexpected rules, closely guarded secrets, and traditions that may shock you. Number 1. Location and general information. Switzerland is located in the heart of Europe, but it seems to live in a parallel universe. A landlocked country surrounded by mountains, with a population of just over 8.5 million people, and a territory smaller than the state of Maryland. However, even though it is small, it is fragmented internally. If you've ever traveled there or tried to plan a trip, you've probably come across a term that sounds a little strange to those who don't live in Europe: cantons. In practice, they are the equivalent of our states. However, unlike what we are used to, these Swiss states have real autonomy. Each canton decides its own rules in areas such as health, education, social welfare, taxes, and even security. Switzerland is divided into 26 cantons. The two most populous are the Canton of Zurich, whose capital is the city of Zurich, and the Canton of Bern, where the city of Bern is located, which also serves as the country's capital. It's like the state of Oklahoma, whose capital is Oklahoma City, or like New York, where the state and the most famous city share the same name, although the capital is different. It may seem simple, but it confuses those who are not used to it. The most curious thing is that this logic of dividing power into pieces is not limited to the territory. It also appears in the way the country is governed. Unlike most European countries, Switzerland has no king or prime minister, and the country's president changes every year. There, the head of state is chosen every 12 months from among the members of a 7-member council. He does not rule alone, nor does he have great powers. He is more of a figurehead than a decision-maker. The rotation is so frequent that even among the Swiss themselves, many people do not know who is in charge at any given moment. And in the midst of all this, there is still the language barrier. Switzerland has 4 official languages: French, German, Italian, and Romansh. But before you think that every Swiss person speaks 4 languages, it's worth mentioning that each region has its own language, and most people only speak the one spoken there. If you go south, you'll hear Italian. In the north, German. In the west, French. And in the middle of it all is Romansh, a language exclusive to the canton of Graubünden in the southeast of the country. It is of Latin origin, but developed in isolation in the Alpine valleys. Romansh sounds like a mixture of French, Spanish, and Italian. If you don't speak or understand any of these languages, you'll just have to hope that English will do the trick. And if you find it strange that a country works like this, wait until you see what happens when you enter the rules of domestic life. Because there, even using a vacuum cleaner has rules. Number 2. Everyday life. In Switzerland, Sunday is a day of law, and here it is in the literal sense. For the Swiss, Sunday is a day of silence. Markets are closed, restaurants are shut, and there are very clear rules about what can and cannot be done inside the home. Want to use the hairdryer? Better think twice. Vacuum cleaner? No way. Making noise on this sacred day of peace and quiet can result in a fine and also dirty looks from neighbors who monitor with the same zeal as a traffic cop. But it's not just on Sundays. Life in Switzerland is made up of small details that, to many people, seem excessive. When a baby is born, for example, the news is not just shared within the family. it goes to the window. Literally. It is common to see signs on facades or balconies announcing the name, date, and sometimes even the weight of the child, as if it were a neighborhood billboard. And speaking of signs, this also applies to traffic. In Switzerland, license plates do not belong to the car, but to the person. If someone has two vehicles, they can simply remove the license plate from one and put it on the other, depending on their needs. For example, during the week you can use the license plate on your small car to go to work. On the weekend, you can put the same license plate on your SUV to travel or go on family outings. This way, you only pay taxes and insurance for one car at a time, saving money without having to maintain two active vehicles at the same time. And since we're talking about everyday curiosities, wait until you hear about some of Switzerland's most unusual festivities. Number 3. Different festivals. How about a goose being beheaded in the middle of a public square? That's exactly what happens at Gansabauet, which means goose cutting in German. Every year in November, on St. Martin's Day, the quiet town of Sursee is transformed. A dead goose is hung in the public square, and blindfolded participants wearing golden masks try to decapitate it with a saber, an ancient curved sword used by knights. With each attempt, the crowd cheers and roots for whoever will land the blow that finally separates the goose's head, as if it were a championship final. How about 6-year-old children smoking cigarettes in public? This happens in Appenzell during Funkensonntag, which means Spark Sunday. At this festival, children light cigarettes, cigars, or pipes as part of a ritual to ward off evil spirits and ensure that the fields remain fertile. Yes, it's legal there, but surreal to outsiders. And if you think the weirdness ends there, wait until you hear about the festival that ends with the explosion of a doll stuffed with gunpowder in the middle of Zurich. In April, there is the Sechs Läuten, a German word meaning the 6 chimes, a reference to the ringing of bells that once marked the end of winter, working hours in Zurich, signaling that the days were getting longer and spring had arrived. At this festival, locals and tourists gather to watch the Berg, a huge snowman made of cloth and dynamite, being burned in a public square. According to tradition, the faster the snowman's head explodes, the better the summer will be. Meanwhile, costumed horsemen circle a 10-meter bonfire, and the whole city counts down in a festive atmosphere. It's the Swiss way of welcoming spring, loud, eccentric, and completely out of character for a country famous for its calm. And if you think Swiss oddities stop at strange festivals, wait until you find out what might be buried in the country's gardens. Number 4. Gold in the garden. In Switzerland, it's not just flowers and vegetables that grow in the backyard. Many Swiss people literally bury gold as a way of keeping their wealth safe. That's right, in the digital age, many Swiss people still bury gold bars and coins in their backyards. According to a survey by the University of St. Gallen, about 5% of the population admits to keeping their gold in their own garden soil, which, extrapolating to the total population, represents an impressive 10 tons of the precious metal hidden underground, valued at over 700 million Swiss francs. And why bury gold in the 21st century? For many Swiss, the metal is still seen as the safest investment against economic crises, inflation, or political changes that could shake the banks. So much so that almost half of those surveyed said they would only sell their gold in an emergency. The practice also reveals that not everyone blindly trusts the soundness of the banking system, even in a country famous for its banks. In 40% of cases, people prefer to keep their gold at home, either hidden away or locked in private safes. Ultimately, what seems like something pirates would do, or Scrooge McDuck himself, shows that, behind their reputation for stability and organization, many Swiss people still prefer to have their treasure within reach or buried in the backyard. Number 5. Impressive facts. Everyone knows that Switzerland has a reputation for being a safe, peaceful, and organized country. But what few people realize is that pacifism does not mean the absence of weapons. Switzerland has one of the highest rates of gun ownership per capita in Europe, even though it is considered one of the safest places in the world. There, it is perfectly legal to have guns at home. Carrying a gun is allowed mainly because military service is compulsory and encourages citizens to keep their weapons even after training. But don't think it's a free-for-all. There are strict rules for storage, transport, and use, and the law does not forgive those who break them. To give you an idea, selling or transferring a gun without permission can result in up to 5 years in prison and a fine of up to 100,000 Swiss francs, which is around 120,000 US dollars. Perhaps because of these effective punishments and astronomical fines, the rate of serious crimes involving guns is extremely low there. The rules work. Perhaps because of these effective punishments and astronomical fines, the rate of serious crimes involving guns is extremely low there. The rules work. In addition to guns, Switzerland takes the idea of being prepared for any emergency seriously. Since the 60s, the country has required every resident to have access to a nuclear shelter. That's right, every Swiss citizen must have a bunker or, at the very least, know where to find a nearby shelter in case of war or a nuclear accident. Currently, there are 300,000 shelters in homes, buildings, and hospitals, in addition to more than 5,000 public shelters. In total, there is enough space to protect virtually the entire population of the country. And those who live near nuclear power plants receive free iodine pills to be used in case of a radioactive leak. But Switzerland also surprises in another sensitive area: controlled substances. There, hard drugs such as heroin can be distributed legally with a prescription. The idea is not to encourage consumption, but to treat addiction as a public health issue. Patients receive controlled doses in environments supervised by doctors and nurses, helping to reduce infections, crime, and overdose deaths. Another issue that draws attention is assisted death. If you've seen the movie Me Before You, you may remember Will Traynor, the main character who decides to travel to Switzerland in search of this procedure. The scene broke hearts in the cinema, but it's not just fiction. In real life, assisted death has been legal in Switzerland since 1942, making the country one of the first in the world to allow this practice. So much so that every year, more than 1,000 foreigners go there in search of this right, mainly terminally ill patients who do not have this option in their home countries. But the curiosities don't stop there. Number 6. Animals. Remember we told you that in the land of Silent Sunday, even turning on a hairdryer can result in a fine? And that there is a law that requires every home to have access to a bunker for emergencies? Well, the laws don't stop there. They also extend to the animal world. If there is one place where even animals have guaranteed rights, it is Switzerland. Switzerland is home to an impressive variety of wild animals that live in freedom. Marmots, lynxes, wolves, mountain goats, chamois, and even vultures are creatures that, with a little luck, you may encounter while hiking in the mountains or on alpine trails. Close coexistence is only possible because hunting is strictly controlled. Only those who have a license, pass specific exams, and respect periods determined by law are allowed to hunt. Outside these rules, the practice is a crime, and almost no one obtains authorization. This zeal also extends to pets. There, guinea pigs, parrots, and parakeets cannot live alone. They need company so they don't suffer from loneliness. Anyone who wants to adopt one of these animals must take at least 2 home. The same rules apply to rats, mice, chinchillas, and other animals that need friends to be happy. Number 7. Nature. In addition to animals, nature also surprises. As we mentioned at the beginning of the video, Switzerland has no access to the sea, but it doesn't lose anything because of that. It may not have salt water, but it has plenty of fresh water. The country is practically Europe's water tower, with 1,500 lakes and 60,000 kilometers of rivers cutting through breathtaking landscapes. 6% of all drinking water in Europe originates in the Swiss Alps, feeding famous rivers such as the Rhine, Rhone, and Inn. And the water quality is impressive, so pure that what comes out of the tap is drinkable, and even toilet flushes use water that is clean enough to drink. Visitors to Switzerland in the summer will find lakes and rivers perfect for a refreshing dip, while trails lead to waterfalls and crystal-clear springs that look like something out of a fairy tale. But if water is a highlight, the mountains are not far behind. More than 60% of the country is covered by the Alps, and almost 50 peaks exceed 4,000 meters in height. Among them is the legendary Matterhorn, famous for its beauty and for being one of the most dangerous mountains in the world. Another giant that draws attention is the Aletsch Glacier, the largest in Europe, stretching 23 kilometers. This river of ice flows between iconic mountains such as Eiger, Monch, and Jungfrau, forming the largest contiguous glacial area on the continent. And how can we forget the forests? After suffering from deforestation in the 19th century, which caused disasters such as avalanches and landslides, the country created a pioneering law in 1876 that stipulates that any deforested area must be compensated by planting the same number of trees elsewhere. This law helped to restore forests, protect endangered species, and transform Swiss forests into a symbol of sustainability. And if you're wondering how people explore all these lakes, mountains, and villages scattered throughout the Alps, the answer is simple: trains. Lots of trains. Number 8. Transportation. Switzerland is a land of railways. With more than 5,300 kilometers of railways, the country is powered by trains, and no other place in Europe sees its residents travel as much on rails as here. This makes sense, as Switzerland has one of the densest, most efficient, and most punctual railway networks in the world. Among the most impressive routes is the line that leads to the highest railway station on the European continent, Jungfrau Joch, the so-called Top of Europe. Located at an altitude of 3,454 meters, this station is only accessible via a 7-kilometer tunnel excavated from the rock over a period of 16 years at the end of the 19th century. Once there, you will find an observation deck overlooking 200 alpine peaks and Europe's longest glacier, the Aletsch. But that's not all. Switzerland also holds impressive records, such as the world's longest railway tunnel, the Gotthard Base Tunnel, which is 57 kilometers long and was completed in 2016 after 17 years of construction that mobilized more than 2,400 workers. Today, 200 freight trains and 60 passenger trains pass through this tunnel every day. The Swiss tradition of tunnel construction goes back a long way. Since 1707, when engineer Pietro Moratini built the country's first road tunnel, called Urnerloch, Switzerland has built more than 1,300 tunnels, totaling 2,000 kilometers of roads and railways that cut through mountains and connect even the most isolated villages. Still on the subject of records, Switzerland is home to the continent's steepest funicular railway in the village of Stuss, where the carriages climb slopes with gradients of up to 110%. Mount Nisan, meanwhile, boasts the world's longest staircase, with over 11,000 steps that follow the tracks of the cog railway. These steps are normally used only for maintenance, but once a year they are transformed into a track for the Nisanlauf race, which attracts competitors from all over the world to tackle more than 1,600 meters of elevation gain in a climb that tests even the fittest. Number 9. The country of cheese, chocolate, and curious dishes. After so many trails, landscapes, and curiosities to end our trip, it's time to talk about one of Switzerland's greatest prides, food. And the star of the show is cheese. Switzerland produces 400 varieties, with famous names such as Gruyère and Emmental, which appear in classic dishes such as fondue and raclette, perfect for warming up on cold alpine days. And if cheese is impressive, chocolate is even more so. Legendary brands such as Toblerone, Lindt, Milka, and Kajer were born in Switzerland, which produces hundreds of thousands of tons of chocolate every year. That's why visiting a factory, learning about the history of Swiss chocolate, and tasting as many chocolates as you can handle is almost a ritual for anyone visiting the country. But the cuisine goes beyond what everyone knows. If you think exotic food customs only exist in some Asian countries, you might want to reconsider. The Swiss also eat cat and dog meat. To be fair, this also occurred in other European countries such as Belgium, Italy, France, and Spain, but always linked to historical contexts of extreme poverty or war. This was probably also the case in Switzerland in ancient times, a reality very different from the current scenario, in which the country is one of the richest in the world. Nowadays, the habit is rare and increasingly less socially accepted, but it is not prohibited by law if it is for personal consumption only. What is illegal is commercialization. For this reason, there are still records, mainly in rural areas, of Swiss families who keep this peculiar and, for many, bizarre and cruel food tradition alive. And that's it for today. So, which of these curiosities about Switzerland surprised you the most? Did you already know about any of these traditions, customs, or incredible places? Tell us in the comments. And if you liked this video, don't forget to like it and subscribe here at Bello Mundo so you don't miss our next content on curiosities and surprising destinations around the world. See you in the next video.